rode the wave of TikTok as it first came out. That was how I know I first followed you. But mate, it'd be great to get a bit of an understanding of kind of, hey, what launched you into sort of that world, but also sort of what your journey as a salesperson's been. As a salesperson, the best salespeople become content experts or messaging experts. And, they want to become a trusted advisor to their customers. Why is that person scoring more goals than the other person? Well, here's all the technology that shows you where they've been. And, for so long, it's been like 10, 15 years now, all the major sporting codes wear GPS trackers on the back of their jerseys. Important people to understand, how do you cut through the noise? And, back to kind of, where Lavender's, bringing the opportunity for people to say, hey, here's a score of, are you talking to people? Are you actually communicating people in a way that we've seen resonate with people who read your email? The Apple Macintosh ad that came out back in the day when they spent it was the most amount of money ever spent on a TV ad. And it was this, black and white thing. And it was, I'll stick up a clip of it in the corner so people know what I'm talking about. But it was a pattern interrupt because every other ad looked like a certain thing. And if you go back and watch it now, you kind of go, this is a bit of a shitty ad. It's not even that good.
Yeah.
They spent a fortune on it, but it was a complete pattern interrupt. So, mate, that's a kind of good segue. One of the questions I wanted to sort of lead everybody with, which is, mate, if you were going to start again, what would you do differently in, building your social profile, going about it, or what would you definitely make sure that you did do? I suppose that's probably the two sides. What would you do differently, but what would you absolutely make sure you did again? Welcome to GrowthPulse, the B2B Sales Podcast, where we take a deep dive into the world of business-to-business sales. Now you can get the most out of your investments in salespeople, sales systems and processes, the lifeblood of any thriving organization. Join us as we explore a range of topics, as well as speak to the industry's thought leaders, vendors, success stories, and people who've both failed and succeeded along the way on their journey in business and sales. Before we start, please do us a huge favour and click subscribe, follow or like wherever you're watching or listening to us. Also, drop us a comment if you've subscribed, and please feel free to ask us any questions about the show. We'd love to get to know our audience. In this episode, we're talking to Will Aitken. I first met Will a few years ago as he started to crowdsource some sales skills online as he grew his sales career. Will has gone on to become one of the most visible faces in social media in the world of business-to-business sales, with over 2 million views of his sales content. He now works for Lavender.ai, who are the world's #1 AI sales email coach. Will and I chat about using social as a salesperson, building a personal brand, and how to think about tech and AI. Will drops some killer insights on how to think about AI at about the 17-minute mark. Make sure you stay tuned for that. So let's jump in. Welcome to another edition of GrowthPulse, the B2B Sales Podcast. I'm Dan Bartels, your host, and I'm joined by Will Aitken. Will, thanks so much for joining the podcast.
Thanks so much for having me on, Dan. Really appreciate it. Great to be here.
Mate, we've been friends on social and other bits and pieces for quite a while now, but many around the traps may not know you as well as I do. You've built a phenomenal social profile over the last couple of years, really jumping out of nowhere. I think you were sort of rode the wave of TikTok as it first came out. That was how I know I first followed you. But mate, it'd be great to get a bit of an understanding of kind of, hey, what launched you into sort of that world, but also sort of what your journey as a salesperson's been.
Yeah, it's fair enough, mate. So you got to hit the nail on the head. I started creating TikToks while I was in sales, and then people kept telling me that I was really good at it. So I did it more and more, and then that kind of led itself to being more of a, hate the word, but creator, influencer type in sales space, and makes me more money, so I'll go with it. But before that, I really was a salesperson selling software. That was always a dream of mine from the time I was recruiting, in fact, back in Sydney. Being a British person going to Sydney, the go-to thing you meant to do is become a recruiter, right? And while I was there,
every recruiter, not every, but a significant proportion of recruiters in Australia are from the UK.
They're bums, yeah. That's the go-to thing. It's the way you get the visa, I think. So I got there, and it was, you'd be really good at recruitment. It's kind of like sales. So then I started recruiting salespeople in Sydney and Melbourne, And very quickly, I was like, these folks are making a little bit more than I am as a recruiter.
Yeah.
And recruitment's almost like sales, but with an extra variable, which is the candidate, right? So you get paid when the deal closes, but that means that the client has to like the candidate and the candidate has to like the client. Yeah. And if they change their mind, the deal's gone, right? So I thought, well, it'd be good to sell something that can't change his mind. So that's what got me onto the idea of being in sales, seeing how much software was selling for. So when I moved to North America, my wife was Canadian. So I want to do that. So sure enough, I did. And then when I started doing it, that's when I started creating content, making TikToks, posting them on LinkedIn. And that eventually created a bit of a following for myself. So it's all just happenstance, really. People was like, wow, you've been really intentional the way you've used TikTok. I'm like, I didn't have anything else to do. So I just was looking for a hobby. I was a little bit lonely. I was living in a new city, and making content allowed me to connect with people who I didn't know, yourself being one of them. Yeah. Being in the comments, chatting to people, feeling like you're good at something. So that's the story up until now, I guess.
Yeah, and because you've built a whole career on the back of it. Realistically, it's always whether it's a sliding doors part of the way that people's lives. I never would have planned to have a almost 15-year career in technology now. And I was in retail sales early on. I sold mobile phones for all things out of school, right? Yeah. I never would have anticipated that a decision that I made to buy some software for a company that I decided to start on a whim would end up in a almost lifelong career now. But it is some of those sliding door moments. But one of the things that I do want to get your view on is I've worked in large technology companies, Salesforce and others, right? And typically there's this sort of journey you've got to go on of being certified to be able to talk to the media and build a profile. And you can't say that as a salesperson. It doesn't make any sense to me, because I've got to go out each and every day and represent the brand. And yes, I might end up getting certified on what the messaging for that latest product is, but 99% of the time, there's no one looking over my shoulder to say, you got that messaging right. And in the world of social connection, and even in the last couple of years where we all had to start doing it like this on screens, being able to break down the barriers for people, and this is almost like what Lavender's helping you guys do as well, which is work out how to open those doors. But like, social and technology is changing the way we've got to engage. So I'd love your opinion on how do we as salesperson, people kind of navigate what that social engagement. Should we be going out and creating TikTok channels? Hey, I'm doing a podcast. Like, what do you think the value of this is? Like, what's your opinion of that general area? That was a really long question.
It's a good question. I've got a lot of notes on it, Dan, so that's all right. Let's start. So I think there's value in it in a few aspects. So almost like you said, I've created a career for myself by creating content. I've made a name for myself. I could now go and work for myself. I could be working for myself right now, but I've chosen to work for a brand and use my audience and creation skills to bring awareness to that. Did the same thing previously, but frankly, this will probably be my last job working for an employer, unless everything changes. And the only reason I've been able to do that is because of the brand that I've built through content. I've created a security safety net for myself. I've kind of propelled my career into where it really has no place be it. I'm still relatively young, 28 years old, and I sometimes feel like I'm a bit out of my league, swimming the big fish. And the only reason that happened is because I started making content. The only reason I did that wasn't because I was thinking, I want to have a career making content. I was just doing it because it's fun, right? Yeah. It's probably why the content was half watchable, because most people do it for their own reasons. Yeah. Now, as a seller, it also benefited me because I was making sales content and I was selling to salespeople as an account executive. I was selling sales tech. Yeah. That is a unique position that the vast majority of salespeople are not actually in. They don't sell to revenue leaders. Most salespeople aren't selling to other salespeople or even marketing people. Most salespeople are selling to everyone else on the planet, And a lot of tech is rev tech, but most of it isn't. Yeah. So in those cases, talking about sales isn't really going to give your career or your selling or your position at the time any benefit. It might help your career, it might like from a sales trainer or a recruiter or get sponsorships, whatever it may be, or go and work in the RevTech space. It might not help you sell it. I do think there is a big place in the market that not many people are tapping into when they don't sell as salespeople. So let's say I sell a HR technology. Or heck, let's say I sell satellite dishes on buildings. You could still build a personal brand and create content for that audience in that space, and you'd stand out way more because there's far less noise and number of people creating in that space.
Yeah,
you could be the go-to voice for HR, and you also happen to sell HR software. You're going to have a heck of a lot easier time selling software, because when I was selling sales tech and I was making sales content, I was getting inbound leads. I was getting people going to our website, typing in, I want Will as my account executive. I was getting people in my pipeline going, your video is the best, building a rapport with me. It was funny, easier to close deals and generate new leads as well. You could do that in HR, but very few salespeople are doing that.
Yes.
And you could actually probably benefit even more. Now, the final point I'm going to say is a lot of enterprises won't allow you to do that. They won't allow you to go online and start talking and say whatever. In fact, the way that I've built my brand has meant I probably will never, ever be able to work for a company like Salesforce. Because I've said the F word online. They'll never hire me. I won't pass their HR background test because they'll, this guy said the F word and all other kind of words online. We're not hiring it. That's a risk to some people. Now, I let all the way into it, but let's say this didn't work out and didn't work the way it did, then I may have closed a lot of doors myself as well. So there are a lot of pros and cons that you got to think about. And the biggest one is like, if I'm going to spend time doing something, is making content the best use of my time if I'm trying to make sales right now. And most of the time it's not, because making content and building an audience is a much longer game. And as a seller, a lot of the time you're focused on short-term results. You're focused on when can I book the next meeting, when can I close the next deal. And creating content is a bit of a longer game than that. I was making TikToks every single day for 4 months and I had like 200 followers. And it was only after the fourth month and second day that something went viral, and then from there it just took off, right? I could have given up at any point of those times, and all that time, if I hadn't been hitting quota, my manager would have been like, hey, Will, what the heck do you think you're doing making TikToks when you're missing quota? Luckily for me, I was already doing okay, which is gave me the luxury to go and then do that. And then he enabled me to do it more because he saw the results coming from it. But it didn't happen overnight. So I would say, if you're a seller and you're thinking, oh, wow, this sounds great, I would say make sure you're, one, hitting your numbers first, but two, also realistic in your expectations. It's definitely not a activity comparable to sending an email, making a call, jumping on a meeting with a client.
No, I agree with that. And I think one of the pieces that, as a salesperson, the best salespeople become content experts or messaging experts. And, they want to become a trusted advisor to their customers. So, and everything in sales is about how do we get to that point where we can actually become, or get the opportunity to give that trusted advice, or give that advice to become trusted. And I think the important thing that I see so many salespeople miss is they don't do the work, that they're going to put in. So if it's cold calls, if it's creating content, if it's social, if it's email, whatever it is, they don't do the quantity of work required that will produce the number of interactions with a potential client prospect to have those conversations. And then they don't know the information, so they haven't spent enough time actually becoming an expert. They're leaning on way too many people around them in an organization. They may see as a security blanket to actually get the messaging. Well, hold on. How are you not already an expert in what it is that you're going to go and sell? Now, again, there are always levels of expert. No one is expecting you're the Nobel laureate yet of your particular space, but I'm trusting that you know what it is you're selling. So if you're not doing that, well, how do you expect customers to trust the product, the solution, the output you're going to sell? So I think it's an interesting development of the way that we engage. And, we all used to spend so much time going to events. Salesforce's Dreamforce is coming up, and there's Oracle World and SAP, whatever, and all these things are coming up as events. But the impact of those events are dropping off year by year by year by year, because everyone expects to go to those events and most of the content I already know. most of the experience. I've already seen people talk. I'm going to go and watch even the keynote speakers. I've seen that person on TEDx or whatever so many times already. Nothing they're telling me is new. So
You got to find out online for a blog.
Yeah, like mastering this way of communicating, I think, is really, really critical and crucial. Like even for me, setting up this podcast, and you've been doing this online stuff so much longer than I have, the level of just finessing the technology. I was telling you as we joined on, I had a buzz on my microphone, and I'm like, okay, get rid of this buzz. Getting that stuff right. They're the 1%ers that make a huge difference. And I don't know, it's how do we as salespeople continue to have a personal brand and make sure that we don't spend 5-10 years working for a company and then we're lost inside, whatever we're going to do for that particular organization. When you move, you got to start from scratch again. I think that's the opportunity for lots of salespeople as well.
Yeah, I do agree. Yeah, I think a lot. Yeah, to be honest, a lot of sellers do get hung up on like the knowing the product. I often find that a lot of people like, I need more product training. I need to know the product inside and out. And they're focused on the wrong thing in those senses. What you described is a lot more important in my mind. Knowing the industry, and most importantly, I would say, is knowing the problems really that folks can be facing that they might not be thinking about, and how people are going about solving them as well. People get so focused on knowing their product that they forget that no one really cares about that until they've figured what's going on and what needs solving. So if you can figure that stuff out and be an expert in that, and learn how to communicate and ask the right questions to understand that, help people understand that, that's probably the most crucial skill. As for online creation, I don't know, I want to do more like keynote stuff though, to be fair. I would do a lot online. I think there's still space for that. And I still have a good time when I go to events and meeting people and hearing people. In fact, one of my colleagues, Jen Allen, who works here at Lavender with me, went to an event recently and she did a talk. It's an hour long, and I'd never heard any of this stuff before. It was all brand new content. And the way it was delivered was very emphatic. And you could feel the energy in the room is very different. There is still space for that. But you're right, learning how to communicate online is probably equally as important as that these days, because you probably wouldn't have even been up on that stage if you hadn't grown a following by writing big videos already. So I hear that.
So you guys are developing at Lavender, and I think the tool is amazing. So like hats off on that, because you're a co-founder, is that right?
I'm not a co-founder. I only joined in, I think, January. Yeah. Okay, so they brought me in because I make better content than them.
Because Lavender is about how do we use tech to communicate better online. When you cut it down, how do you use technology to make sure that each message that I'm sending out to someone on email or written communication is more effective?
Yes.
Does using technology start to take away the personality of the people that are communicating? Because this is one of the things. So my wife's a teacher, right? She's teaches kindergarten, but she obviously sees all of secondary education. And there's this huge issue in secondary education around like kids using ChatGPT and things to do their assignments.
Yeah.
And the teachers don't even have to run it through an engine. They can go, we know that was written by AI. Kids see it.
So, right? Same there. So people leave comments on my post that are written by AI, and I'm like, I know that's AI. And they're like, how did you know? And I'm like, because it's not written like a person, and it's like Captain Obvious comment, Yeah. But so your question is, can the tech sometimes take away? I 100% agree. Do you know what? I freaking hate those AI generated content. They're rubbish. Which it may be weird to hear from someone who works for a company with a website, lavender.ai.
Yeah.
But I think the second you solely rely on any kind of technology to do your job for you, well, that means you're probably doing a pretty crappy job to start with. You know what I mean? Like if some stupid robot or generative engine can do as good as work as you can, you're willing to admit that, you don't really deserve a job. I know it's pretty brutal, but I'm just saying, like, you got to figure out what you can bring to the role to make more of it. And emails, especially in sales, like, let's be real, it's one of the most human, relationship driven professions there is. It's all about talking to people.
Yeah.
And when you start replacing your work with AI, then whoa, geez, you must suck at communicating with people. So when I think about that, I'm like, yeah, the second you do that, you're playing the fool's game. You're probably de-skilling yourself, probably missing out on key learnings that you and I have had because we've been in sales roadmap. A lot of the early people are missing out on that. I think tech has a place to help us, but definitely not a place where you should try and replace your work with it. Like, there's a ton of tools out there right now, ChatGPT being one of them, where you can use that to help you either get started or maybe get you across the line. But if you don't have the human in the loop, as they call it in the AI thing, it's always going to be subpar, really. It's going to be average, because that's what it does. It does an average response for you or creates an average email for you. So in my mind, tech is more of like use it as a way to assist you and augment you and make you that little bit better.
Yeah.
So like the way that Lavender's design is like, okay, you wrote this great email, or maybe your email wasn't written that great. These are the things you should change, rather than saying, hey, we're going to write this whole email for you. Because I promise you, no matter how good our tech was and how good our AI was and how good our data was, if we wrote those emails for all those people, the recipients will probably feel the same way that your wife does as a teacher. That, no, it's not a human, because it screams, it has all these little clues. What we often forget in sales is, because salespeople don't get sold to that much, we don't really know what it means to feel like a buyer. I think this is a big opportunity for a lot of sellers, is to understand being in the shoes of a buyer, both when they're being prospected and people are trying to book meetings with them, cold call them, send them emails. They don't really know how that feels, because if I went in my inbox right now, I'm getting a few more cold emails these days because I'm a little bit more important. But when I was a sales rep, the only emails I was getting were responses to my emails.
Yeah.
Unsubscribe, but other good stuff as well, People weren't trying to sell to me, so I didn't know what it meant to write a good or bad email, what that looked like. Whereas buyers, you get 200, 300 emails a day. Yeah. And immediately, they couldn't possibly read all of those. These are busy executive people that paid really good money. They don't have time to read through every single email they receive. So what they do instead is like start to filter out all the junk. And there's a few things that salespeople do that like screams junk, trying to sell it to you. And they don't, at the moment they know it's a sales and marketing message, they just delete it. Or the moment they know it's automated, they delete it. The moment they know it's written by AI, which, as you just mentioned, is obvious once you've seen it a few times, delete it, right? Yeah. So I think like our ability to stand out is part of our ability to be human. So yeah, I think that AI does have, tech in general does have the ability to take away from what we're doing and ruin it. So I'm always thinking about that. Like I could be using ChatGPT to generate my video scripts, but they wouldn't be very good videos. It'd be just more of the same stuff, and I want to do new stuff. You know what I mean?
I think so. I mean, a second ago, which I think is I haven't heard anyone say this, and I think it's a really good way to think about it. It creates an average response. Because it's taken the best and the worst and pushed it back into an engine and popped out an average, which
man, you're writing LinkedIn post right now. This is gold. Sorry, I said it, but like you're taking it and putting it into a better master thread. That it's an average, right? So it's always going to be as average.
Well, hold on. If I want to be run of the mill, hey, use the tool. Now, I think there is a space that will say, and tech has done this for a long time, which says, hey, I've taken whatever you've created or what you're recording, and I've put this back against the best measure. Mm-hmm. I've put the world record line down, and I've said, hey, listen, you're this far from the world record line, and these are the things we recommend you would do to achieve from where you are to the world record line. And I think that becomes really, really powerful. It's like, I know I watched one of your videos with Jen the other day, and you guys were, within 3 minutes trying to write an email, an outbound email, and get the highest score. I know you were upset that Jen beat you, but
her email was better. So I'll admit when I've been beaten. I wasn't ready. I should have got in more in the zone on that one. I'm disappointed in myself more than.
But I think like that's really powerful. And you look at that and you say, okay, I can see, like, I do a lot in sport, and you watch sports people use technology to say, why did that person run faster? Why is that person scoring more goals than the other person? Well, here's all the technology that shows you where they've been. And, for so long, it's been like 10, 15 years now, all the major sporting codes wear GPS trackers on the back of their jerseys. And it like they'll track them now to the point where they know that that particular athlete, after running at that speed for that long, will be hitting lactic acid, so they've got to get subbed off because their performance drops like this when those things happen. Yet I think as salespeople, we don't think about that for ourselves and say, hey, if I've done 60 emails today or I've made 60 calls, has my performance dropped off? But I know myself, like once I get to 10, I'm like, I'm bored. Copy, paste, next, copy, paste. And they're garbage. They're awful communications, right? But I think to the comment you've made of AI is the average. And if you want to be average, by all means, that's okay. You can do it at scale. Except that's not how great solutions and great engagements are built. And as salespeople, I hear all the time people talk about AI will replace salespeople. I'm like, no.
It will replace pretty crappy salespeople, but
well, it might. But it won't replace salespeople because even and I look at it like this: if you walk into McDonald's today, yes, there is those screens you can go and put your order in. Yeah. Except they still always have 2 or 3 people sitting behind the counter because that human interaction, if it worked and the computer generated engagement had replaced human interaction, there'd be no counter. There'd just be a hole in the wall for your food to come out. Except their experience of what it's like to walk into a store, and it's got nothing to do with some people want to pay cash or some people want to ask questions about the menu. They've got enough money to build a chatbot to do that. That's fine. They can solve that easily. It's the fact there's a human engagement in sales. There's a human interaction in that piece. They still want someone to physically hand the bag of food over and actually have that interaction with what you do. Otherwise, they'd optimize their stores tomorrow and get rid of half their staff. But that actually detracts from the engagement. It doesn't make it better. It doesn't make it more profitable. And I think this is the pieces as salespeople that we don't think about, that we add to value. We don't detract from it.
If we're doing the right things, 100%.
Yeah.
And
go on.
Let's be real. People, I don't know. I sometimes when I think about this, but people are distrustful of AI, but they also wonder what they're missing. I think there's a curiosity to not wanting binary results. If you know what I mean. I'm just kind of putting it out there right now. This is a little bit off the gut, right? But like I feel like people don't want the expected all the time, right? They don't. Like if you knew every single day what you want to eat, what you're gonna wear, what you're gonna say, what was gonna happen, what weather's gonna be, like it would start, your life would start to be like eating rice cakes for every meal. It starts to be boring. Yeah. We need these spontaneous moments and human interactions for it to feel good. Yeah. That's why people go insane when they don't talk to anyone. Like if you let someone be a hermit, they lose their minds if they don't do something for long enough. I feel like we want this, despite the fact that most buyers don't want to be sold to. They still want to talk to other people.
That's one of the ones that I think, after having a career in sales, I'm coming up on 30 years having been in sales, and anyone who says, "Oh, my buyers don't want to talk to me," or that's actually not true. They don't want to talk about what you wanted to talk to them about. Most people are really keen to actually have a conversation with you. Most people, and that goes back to the what we were talking about earlier, which is if you're an expert in a particular area that they're interested in or is going to impact their life, they want to talk to you. It's that engagement is valued by them. Yet, if all you're there to do is say, "Hey, listen, let me ram this down your throat so you can buy my stuff. I've got other stuff to do. Listen, yes, maybe I should buy your kit, but it's number 47 on my list of things to do." And if I don't get the first 46, to your point before, making TikToks is great as long as it moves me forward. But if I wasn't getting the first 46 things done on my list of stuff to do, my boss is going to start to ask me, what am I doing with time, right?
Yeah.
So like that I think becomes like important people to understand, how do you cut through the noise? And, back to kind of, where Lavender's, bringing the opportunity for people to say, hey, here's a score of, are you talking to people? Are you actually communicating people in a way that we've seen resonate with people who read your email? Like, I think that value starts to change for people dramatically, how they can achieve their jobs. I mean, technology's done it for a long time. If you look at CRMs or ERPs or, we both sold DocGen, you understand what good looks like in those spaces, yet it hasn't translated across to the rest of the way that we communicate. Maybe that's really what AI is doing for us. It's opening up the way that we can communicate more effectively, and augment the standards that we have.
Yeah. I do think, to your point, you see this what good looks like. I do think there's this space, and both in when you're prospecting someone and trying to get their attention, but also when you're in the sales, there's this big idea of pattern interrupts, right? And oftentimes that's doing or saying something they haven't heard before, which throws them off and gets their attention or gets them interested.
Yeah.
Now, a pattern interrupt is something that interrupts the standard pattern. But again, back to your point about AI being the average of everything, AI is literally trained through machine learning to learn patterns.
Yes.
So the moment you cannot possibly interrupt the pattern using something that's been learned on patterns, millions of patterns, right? So I feel like that's an extra spot sprinkled on top. Yep. Where I just think, even so, sometimes people will say, I say, hey, the best subject lines data says are 2 words long.
Yeah.
They go, well, what about that? You told me that subject line was really good. And that one was 4 words. I'm like, yeah, but that subject line is unlike anything else that's ever been sent, So I'll give you an example. I gave a subject line example the other day. And the subject was taught to me by a friend, and the subject was 3 numbers. The first number was like 4. The second number was 8. And the third number was 4,766. So the subject line is 4, 8, whatever number I just gave you, 3,766, right?
Yeah.
And someone sent me a message saying, Will, you told me that the data says that numbers shouldn't go in subject lines. You said that subject lines that include a number receive 50% less opens. I said, yes, they do. But that's because the majority of subject lines that include a number don't say 4, 8, 3, 7, 6, 6. They say, I'm going to 10x your pipeline. I'm going to 10x your, I'm going to give you 50% more. They sound salesy. The majority of what the data is picking up on that is because people are using numbers in that way, not in a way that's 100%. Like, no one's sending subject lines that are literally just numbers.
Yeah.
Like a numbers and comments. So I'm like, okay, I know that that's what the data says, but you've got to understand that, like, that's picking up on a pattern, and the pattern is that people are sending emails that have subject lines that are like promising numbers or prices or to 10x or increase by X percentage. Those are the numbers you don't want to be using, but this is still a pattern interrupt, despite the fact the data may disagree with it, which is actually a good thing. Sometimes going against the data is actually a better thing. You know what I mean? So there's still that opportunity there, no matter what technology can help us identify.
Yeah, it's funny. Just thinking about that then made me think of, I don't know if you remember the Apple Macintosh ad that came out back in the day and they spent it was the most amount of money ever spent on a TV ad, and it was this black and white thing, and it was I'll stick up a clip of it in the corner so people know what I'm talking about, but it was a pattern interrupt because every other ad looked like a certain thing, and if you go back and watch it now, you kind of go, this is a bit of a shitty ad. It's not even that good.
Yeah.
They spent a fortune on it, but it was a complete pattern interrupt compared to what was happening. But what it didn't ignore was the fact that they were launching a brand new product, and they knew they were going to have to speak to X number of people in order for that product to start to get penetration. so they can actually drive through and get people into stores to buy the product and buy the sales and deliver the sales. And I think underneath all of this, it's a piece that we forget as salespeople. I don't know if you saw the other day we interviewed two guys from Finland, Miro and Anton, who launched this B2B sales cheat sheet. And it's got like 8, 9, 10 little graphs of stuff you've seen before, buying models, a pathway for people in their sales career. You've seen all these things before, but I'm reminded that so many salespeople will go through their months, and lots of salespeople just went through their quarter, and they didn't do the 101s. Like they didn't talk to enough people. They didn't have enough meetings, and then they got to the end of the quarter and went, "Oh shit, missed my quota." Okay, did you do the basics? Did you talk to enough people? Did you send enough? Were the emails good? Were the meetings well prepared? Did you do the right amount of discovery? Did you actually focus on solving a problem for your customer, or were you just trying to sell your stuff? Because if you focused on solving problems for your customers, I guarantee your number took care of itself. I'm reminded back to, you said at the top of the session that, you started generating content because you thought it would be valuable for salespeople. And after a period of time, that content having enough process and momentum, it took off by itself. And if you went, in preparation for this, went back and, watched a bunch of your early content, and all of it was really good information, right? For salespeople about, hey, how do you just do the basic things right? And I think that's so important. It's the pattern interrupts there. The way the messaging gets through is important. But as long as the core information is correct, it doesn't actually change all that much. And I think underneath that, we all forget the other piece of this, which is we assume that I need to deliver the message different every single time. Except if you look at people like comedians get really, really good at 2 or 3 shows, and they've told that joke 10,000 times, and they've got the timing right, they've got the intonation right, and they can read the crowd properly as to how to say it. Except if you've been to see them, like there's no point half the time seeing the same comedian 10 times because it's the same show, right? But they get that momentum, that messaging absolutely perfect every single time, and it works. Like Steph Curry throwing a 3-point shot, he throws it the same way every single time. But what they work out is that the person listening hasn't heard it before. This is new to them. The messaging is new to them, and they get really good. And there's pattern interrupts in there, but it's pattern interrupts against everything else that person's used to. And that's what gets the momentum for them. That's what gets the outcome. So it's an interesting problem, I think, for salespeople to try and get their heads around, because we get bored in our own lives.
One of the early pieces of content I made is that you get bored of your pitch or your script or what you're saying when you open up for a cold call a lot sooner than the people you're saying it to, because you've said it 100 times. First time they're hearing it, typically. So that's why I always say to people when they're in a slump, people start trying to change things, and I'm like, did this work for you before? Yes. Well, it hasn't. What you do? Like, this is the worst time to change something, because you're ruining what you know works now, and you're going to complete uncharted territories. Because they've heard it a million times. They assume that they're bored. They don't want to say anymore. Where really the fundamentals, like you said early on, when I started creating content, and I should probably do more of this now, you're reminding me, is that those fundamentals can always be reminded. You can always ask more questions, better questions, listen more. Because that stuff, you forget it, and you can not focus on it. Really, that fundamentals is probably the most important thing. Also, there are tons of people who haven't even mastered the fundamentals yet. There are some people, which is probably why that content did well at the time. Because I remember when I didn't know. Like, I didn't know what I know now, a few years ago. When I was being a recruiter in Sydney, I didn't have a clue about any of these discovery techniques, or asking the right questions, or writing a compelling email. I didn't know any of this stuff, right? So sometimes you don't know what you don't know. Because back then I probably would have told you I was an amazing salesperson.
100%.
Because the ego would have been involved. So sometimes it's a case of looking for knowledge from people who've done it a little bit more than you have as well.
I mean, I was saying the other day, I've been cleaning my office recently and came across an old box of files I ended up shredding and pulled out from one of my first proper corporate sales jobs. I got managed out because I was 20 something and I didn't know how to sell, and had a job that I was just not ready for and got managed out. And I read my performance plan and went, shit, I would have fired me. It was horrendous. But I didn't know what discovery was. I didn't know what a cold call. I didn't know how to cold call. I was selling insurance of all things, right? And so all these things that the organization just assumed that I knew how to do, I could have gone and learnt them, but it was getting those basics done. I mean, I'm never surprised seeing some of the online sales gurus. Jeremy Minor, who I'm a huge fan of, comes to mind. He sells tonality. His whole training course, he's got this thing called NEPQ, and like everyone, if you haven't got a great tone, you should absolutely check it out. He's awesome. He's built a multi-million-dollar business on teaching you how to use tonality with people. And
it's very true. The first thing you notice when you see him appear in your feed is doing some weird voice.
Yeah, but
Andy, no, he's saying some very slight. Yeah, that's a very good even observation, because sometimes what he's saying, I'm like, you're right. The tonality captures you every time.
But he's built. But when you see great salespeople operate in a room, and all of a sudden you're like, how did that guy change that? How did that person change that meeting in a heartbeat?
Yeah.
And all of a sudden it's, I know, I heard what you're saying, but look, can you tell me more about that? They said exactly what you were just going to say. It was how they said it.
Yeah.
And
very true.
AI can't do that. AI has no ability to be able to give you that knowledge of when to use that. There's no, Apple Watch is not going to pull up use tonality.
It's tonality. Yeah, that's very true. We can't. At least not now. I don't think anytime soon as well.
No. But I mean, I think it's also back to, like, you look at, and I'm reminded that, looking at the content you've built over time, right? So, again, some of your clips have got 250,000 likes and views and all this type of stuff, which is just outrageous. Like, you think you sat down for a couple of minutes and made a post, and all of a sudden people have watched it how many times? But it's the consistency and the regularity of people going back, and over time, it didn't happen in one day. You didn't get a 250,000 people watched a video 10 seconds after you posted it. It happened over a period of time. And I think that's the power of recorded tech that's now available for everybody. So, you were mentioning at the top of the podcast, your next role probably won't be working for somebody else. It'll be doing some stuff for yourself. And, as a salesperson, when does that start? Realistically, all salespeople, when great salespeople, work from themselves from the beginning.
Yeah,
they just view that someone else has built the product for me and is willing to give me a whole bunch of resources, but it's my business, it's my company, and I'm the CEO of my territory, right?
Yeah,
and that's what makes a good salesperson. That's what they're already building a personal brand. Their clients are their clients. If you work in the sales force, you see that. The guys that people that get paid the most typically work on a major account. I mean, in Australia, often it's Telstra or BHP or someone. They've often worked with that account for 20 years.
Yeah,
they own that account. You're buying as a major vendor. You're buying that person to come and work for you because they've already built all the relationships. Their brand is that customer. And so it's building that personal brand. It's whether you do it in technology, whether you're doing it at events, it's all the same. It's just a different delivery model, right?
Yeah.
So what's next for you? You mentioned out of this, you've built an amazing sales career, mate. You've got an international brand now that is your name. Is it more stuff socially? Is it delving deeper into the sales model? Like, well, where do you go from here?
What would you like to see, Dan?
I reckon you've got a couple of pathways you can follow. I mean, you could go in with your knowledge, you end up being a CMO. You can end up being a top level salesperson. You could build a consultancy to teach other people how to do it, mate. It's up to it's what you want to do, really.
Mm. Yeah.
What excites you?
What excites me? Well, right now, it's always changing. Seems for everyone else on the planet. Right now, what I want to do is be on stage a bit more often. Find those moments. Earlier this year, I did a talk for 1,200 reps for the Canadian version of Telstra Optus.
Yeah, man.
And I came off the stage feeling like, this is what I should be doing all the time. But you can't get there without doing some extra stuff on the way. One, telling people that you do that, which I rarely do, because I feel dodgy advertising myself sometimes, because I work with who pays me to advertise for that. So I want to do more of that. I want to be on stage. I want to be talking to people in person. I want to be helping people get better. So I'd say it's probably a combination of keynote training, workshops, and part of the way that I think that can get done better and get more credibility for people to trust in what they're buying is it's probably going to create some more credible content that isn't just TikToks and YouTube videos. Book or something, I'll be like. So that's the next thing that I think will happen.
So mate, you presented to 1,200 salespeople. Give us the crib notes. Like, what was the messaging you gave to them? Like, what was the cut through message that you wanted them to walk away with?
The main thing that the message of the talk was that the best salespeople do the complete opposite of what a buyer expects a salesperson to do.
Yeah.
So when a buyer meets a salesperson, they expect them to lie to them. They expect them to deceive them.
Mm-hmm.
They expect them to push something on them they don't need. They expect them to not take no for an answer. They expect them to be self-serving and greedy and focused on what's in it for them.
Yeah.
So when you can flip that entire like stereotype, if you will, on its head, you often actually build massive amounts of trust and much better relationships, and we'll have a much easier time selling. So that was the message of the talk. But really, as I said earlier, it's delivery, right? So I did that with a bunch of jokes. So I got a call with a few of their team before the talk.
Yeah.
And I said, what's some jokes that only people who work for your company would even understand? People are going to be like, how did he know that? So then I went in there armed with like, their comp plan sucked, apparently. So I was like, I put an image up and I was like, oh, this looks like a mess. Looks like trying to figure out how much you get paid at the end of the month. So I threw in a couple of jokes. The person who paid me didn't also make that joke. But so some inside jokes as well as just some funny jokes as well,
Yeah, nice.
Yeah, so that was good. Yeah, there were things I could have done better, but it was just more so the experience being up there, doing it, talking to people afterwards. It's a different feeling to put stuff online, even though there are views. There are videos about like you said, about 2 million views. Talking to 1,200 people was a lot more nerve-wracking, a lot better.
Well, you don't know when you're recording it the first time, right? That it's going to be.
Well, you definitely don't.
Many people.
If I did, I would have done things a little bit differently. But who knows? That may mean they wouldn't have gone viral because the thing that I did didn't go right.
So, mate, that's a kind of good segue. One of the questions I wanted to sort of leave everybody with, which is, mate, if you were going to start again, what would you do differently in, building your social profile, like, going about it, or what would you definitely make sure that you did do? I suppose that's probably the two sides. What would you do differently? But what would you absolutely make sure you did again?
What I would do differently is I would have done it sooner.
Okay.
There was a lot more opportunity for this type of thing. You look at some of the people who are big now, who are doing the things I want to do. And the only thing that's different between them and me is that they started before I did. And so in my mind, if I had to do that, now I can't say, If only in 2012 when I was 18 years old and going into a university as a fresher and doing some stupid degree that I never used. Yeah. But I had started making sales content then, because obviously it didn't work out that way, right? But who knows how hard it's going to be in a couple of years' time.
Yeah.
I don't think it's going to get easier.
No.
Just look at the way the internet's made up, this opportunity, it's wave, right? So the thing I wish I'd have done differently was started sooner. The thing I would have definitely done again is just done it, right? Like sometimes, since I was a wee lad, I've always wanted to make content.
Okay.
To make YouTube or gaming content. I even have a couple of YouTube videos you will not find online anymore of me making YouTube content and talking about things, but they had nothing to do with sales. Like that.
Yeah.
That was the show 13 Reasons Why. And my wife, who was my girlfriend at the time, loved that show. You know, it wasn't that long ago. It was 5 years ago. And I made a video about like a theory I had. It got like 10,000 views, right? Well, there was always this creation bug on me, but there was this like imposter syndrome thing that was going on. Now, the moment that went away was when I started doing it and just stopped thinking about it.
Yeah.
And then, like I said, I did it every single day for 4 months. And then, you know, after 150 days, suddenly, pop, then it went. And it wasn't because it was the other 149 days that led to what happened on day 150.
Yeah.
There was no way I could have started on day 150. It just doesn't happen like that. No. I got good through repetition. Same as anything in life. Yeah. You want to get good at cold calling, make a bunch of cold calls. You want to get good at cold emailing, write a bunch of cold emails. Don't automate them. Won't have to get good at anything. Like, if you want to get good at anything, you want to get good at speaking on stage, if you want to get good at going on podcasts, if you want to get good at hosting a podcast, you record a bunch of freaking podcasts, and I promise you that episode 50 will be better than episode 1. 100. Right? So that would be I'd still do it, whatever it is I wanted to do, over and over again, even if it felt like it wasn't working, because every failure is a way to get better. The only thing I would have maybe done a little bit differently as well is probably start taking notes of what other people were doing as well. Yeah. Because there is a ton of lessons that we can learn from people. We get out of our own heads, leave our ego behind, see what's working for other people, and then figure out how to make that work for us as well. That's often the case of, like, you know, when I was on TikTok, I was like, why none of my videos working? And I started looking at people's videos that were blowing up, like Jeremy Minor. Yeah. His videos were shorter, or they had a better hook, or they were a bit more of a unique take, right? So, like, by noticing those things, you can often kind of like fast track your progress and remove the amount of failures you have to get before you get success. So, yeah. It's like,
I think, like, everything we've talked about today, I think, like, that's a really key message. You know, okay, so you want to hit quota. Hey, are you analyzing what others around you or competitors that are doing, or, you know, someone in a different industry is doing really, really well? How are you executing that in your engagements? You know, to your point, these parts have been super successful, but, you know, you've fallen off the mark here. So how do you not change that, but how do you fix that particular other piece? You know, don't change the whole model, just change a little piece. You know, I'm reminded of the swimming world champs have just been on, and there's a couple of athletes who've just been DQ'd for turns. I guarantee you, the rest of their races will stay the same. Their turns are going to get really good.
Yeah, that's so true.
I have to fix the start. I got disqualified for the turn, right? Yeah, and like, you know, get those pieces right. But I think, to your point, it's doing the 149 episodes before you get to the 150th, and all of a sudden, hey, you know, you're going to have a base, and everybody's going to follow through. And I like, it's do the work. Like, there's no shortcut to doing the work. Yeah, occasionally someone's going to jag a lottery win. Okay, cool. Good luck to them.
You know, and then they're going to sell a course of how to do it, and it's not going to work for anyone.
Buy a ticket. It's got a lottery. It's got the lottery for a reason.
Yeah. I'll teach you how to win the lottery. Just buy my $1,000 course.
Buy my $1,000 course. Yeah, exactly. Well, mate, we'll call it quits there. Thank you so much for joining the podcast, mate. I know our listeners will definitely appreciate your insights. You know, it's been generally enjoyable watching the rise and rise of Will as you've become this global superstar.
Comes off the rise, though, mate. The next podcast I come on for you, Dan, will be when I've hit rock bottom That's
We'd love to get you back on at some point in the future because I'm sure you're going to do some amazing stuff. We might get yourself and Jen on. It'd be interesting to talk to the two of you about things. Actually, that'd be a cool little session.
Jen and I are pretty tight. We may play at the beef for social media, but we have a lot of shared thoughts on sales, content, which is probably why we feel so comfortable being horrible to one another online.
I've got a couple of very, very good sales colleagues who I'm just as horrible to, mate. So they will know who I'm talking about.
In that place.
Yeah, regularly is. So,
issues, right?
exactly right.
That's how they stay your mates and don't find someone better to hang out with.
100%.
But yeah, mate, this has been awesome. Great to finally chat with you one-on-one as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So everyone listening, thank you so much for listening to myself and Will talk. If you're on YouTube, look down below, click subscribe, give us a like. If you're on Apple or Spotify, give us 5 stars and a comment. Share the conversation. Share any comments you've got about things you'd like to hear us talk about. But that's been the GrowthPulse, the B2B podcast for today, and talk to you all next time. Thanks so much.